So, in terms of leaky abstraction, let's touch on this a little bit more because that's a term that you hear a lot. It's not really any kind of pattern. It's not an anti-pattern. It's, I guess, what you call a smell. So,
Yeah.
maybe describe leaky abstraction a bit because people out there are going to hear it. What does it mean?
So a leaky abstraction is where the idea is an abstraction should isolate you from the implementation. So you should be able to say, I don't care what implementation I'm using, I'm just going to write to the abstraction. So if we take an example of LINQ, and ORMs are fairly famous for this, but LINQ is a good example because it has an abstraction itself. Let's have an iQueryable of person where we'll have a class person. So imagine we had appropriate stuff to make this work with entity framework and LINQ to SQL. And we're just going to give it a name. In fact, I bet, am I already within a person class? I'm not, but I've probably got one somewhere else. Let's kill some other stuff. So, people. So suppose we've got some sort of repository of people, and we want to find John. Okay, we want to find everyone whose name starts with John. So I'm going to return a list of person just for the sake of keeping things simple. And the abstraction I'm working to here, iQueryable of T, means I can just write people, return people dot where person dot name starts with John. And then call to list so that we've got a list of people. So I'm not concerned about all the interesting bits of LINQ around, but we don't need that bit, around deferred execution and whether I should be disposing of this repository, this sequence of people or whatever. All I'm concentrating on is this where clause. So according to LINQ, this is fine. It compiles, it builds, it's all fine. Will this work? Well, I think so on most implementations of LINQ. However, will it find, suppose I've got a database, person table, which has a column called name, and suppose it's got Jon Skeet and Jonathan Agnew. Okay, so which of those will it find? Is this starts with case sensitive or not? Well, if this were a perfect abstraction where the idea is that when LINQ translates code into SQL, it's going to make it behave exactly as it would if this were in memory, because I can change this to IEnumerable of person for an in-memory version or an in-process query, and it will still build absolutely fine. And the promise of LINQ, as it were, is that you don't need to worry where the data is coming from. It will all just magically work. You can write the same queries. Now, I'm not going to say that anyone from Microsoft has ever said those exact words because they would be foolish to do so. You absolutely need to care where the data is coming from. You absolutely need to know which bits make sense to query on the database, which bits make sense to process in memory, etc. But this is the impression that people are given because you can write this and it will build and it will at least to some extent work. People think it's just going to behave exactly the same way as it would in LINQ to objects with a list of person, in which case it wouldn't find me because string dot starts with is case sensitive. What will this do on a SQL server? What will it do on an Oracle server? I can't tell you. In order to know, I would have to know more about that particular implementation, and it may well depend on the settings within the database itself, and that's a leaky abstraction. The promise of the abstraction has leaked away, and we're interested. We need to know about some implementation details. Now, don't get me wrong. The fact that LINQ is a leaky abstraction does not take away all its value. All it means is you need to be aware that it's leaky. It still lets you think in one particular way and take account of those leaks. You need to be aware of them, adjust for them appropriately, make sure that you have a look whenever you're doing anything that you aren't quite sure what the sequel is going to look like, or even if you frankly are fairly sure, you probably want to check that it's going to hit your appropriate indexes, etc. Which is all very well, but it is a leak.
I have a fun little trick. Um, if let's pretend that we're playing with tags and that your tag list in your database is just a comma separated string, and you want to find a particular tag, and you change starts with to contains.
Yep.
With if you have a big database, there we go. If you have a big database, you will get a knock on your door probably within, I would say, an hour, with the DBA wanting to utterly shoot you because you've just done what LINQ and C# tell you what to do. Good. I'm glad you're doing this. So,
so this would be article.tags.contains. Now, if you're not careful, articles for one thing, and we need to change that.
There we go.
Right. Yeah. Article. There we go. Hurrah. Yes. So for one thing, that kind of looks okay.
Sure.
We're trying to think of this as if it's a list, but it wouldn't work terribly well if we had a tag that was BC#. Mm-hmm. We've tried to take this idea of one field. Let's treat this comma separated thing as a list. So what Rob's really saying is this will end up with some SQL of from article in articles. In fact, sorry, it's been so long since I've done this. Select star from article table, where article dot tags like %C#. Now, it wouldn't actually do it. It would do presumably like question mark or like P0 and put P0 is %C# %. But yeah, the point that Rob is getting to is this will fail on your index.
Oh yeah, it's what they call a non-sargeable query. It destroys all indexing and it could crash your application entirely, depending how big the table is.
And how robust your DBAs are, and whether they have baseball bats.
And it could get you fired, literally. It really could. It's funny. We do a series here at Tekpub with DBA Rob Sullivan, and oh gosh, if he's watching this right now, I know he's just pounding the table because he will. He has told me many times he's had to late night rescue an application that is going down because you're doing a full table scan. And slowing everything down, and the requests pile up, memory shoots through the roof, and all of a sudden you're down. For what? For one line of LINQ code that is the ultimate leaky abstraction.